minutes. Welcome, everyone, to the April 23rd, 2025 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. I'm Candace Breyer, Chairperson of the Zoning Board. Really? We're going to do this again. I'm Candace Breyer, Chairperson of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board of Appeals is a 9-person volunteer board nominated by the mayor and approved by City Council. First, we will hear from Planning Services, represented tonight by Charlie Collins. Then the applicant or their representative will make their presentation. Applicants will have 5 minutes in which to make their presentation. Staff will keep time and will announce when 30 seconds are remaining. Public comment is available in person or remotely. We will first call on individuals present to address the board, then remote participants. To speak during a public hearing or during the public comment remotely, press star 9 if listening by phone, or use the raise hand feature if viewing through the web link. For phone access, call 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 938-1648-1007. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand using the last 3 digits of your phone number or by name if available for those accessing through the web link. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds. We may ask questions of either the city or the applicant. We will acknowledge any written comments received by the board. We will allow an appearing party to express their support or objections. The board will then discuss the appeal and formulate a motion to approve the appeal. 5 affirmative votes of the board will be required for an appeal to be granted. Finally, any qualified party who is aggrieved by a decision of the board can appeal that decision to the Washtenaw County Circuit Court on a timely basis. Roll call. Candace Breyer, I am here. Todd Grant.
I am here.
Dave DeVarty.
Party here.
Patty Leskowski.
Here.
Julie Weatherby.
Here.
Drew Denson. Mike Daniel. Dharma Ackman.
Here.
Christina Glusek.
Here.
We have a quorum. Moving on to approval of the agenda. I will note briefly that the second item on our agenda, 3310 Washtenaw Avenue, has been postponed. So we will take any public comment tonight if anyone's here on that petition, but it will be renoticed and there'll be a public hearing and consideration of that later, likely next month. That said, are there any comments or questions on the agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Motion from Todd, support from Julie. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to approval of the minutes. We have minutes from the March 26th, 2025 ZBA meeting. Are there any corrections, questions, comments on those minutes? Not, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you, Patty. Support?
Support.
Support from Dave. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed? Moving on to public hearings, we have petition ZBA 25-0010, 910 Briarwood Circle. Charlie?
ZBA 25-0010-910 Briarwood Circle. James Johnson, representing the DBS Group, is requesting a variance of 38.73 square feet from Table 5.24-3, other mixed use and non-residential and special purpose zoning districts permanent signs. The total sign package includes 7 wall signs for a new retail grocer at the Briarwood Mall. The property is zoned C2B Business Service District. This subject property is located west of State Street, north of I-94 in the Mallets Creek watershed. The original site plan for Briarwood Mall was approved in 1972. The current redevelopment project includes 354 multifamily residential units in a 4-story building next to a 2-story grocery store, a 2-story retail store, and an adjacent sporting field. Table 5.24-3, other mixed use and non-residential and special purpose zoning districts permanent signs limits sign area to a maximum 200 square feet. The applicant requests a variance of 38.73 square feet more than the allowed 200 square feet, which includes 238.73 total square feet of sign area. The sign package includes the following wall signs. 1. Harvest Market logo sign, 63.62 square feet. 2, Harvest Market identification sign, 69.27 square feet. 3, welcome sign, 23.33 square feet. 4, parcel pickup sign, 19.41 square feet. 5, and 6, 2 farmhouse restaurant signs, 5.27 square feet and 34.62 square feet respectively. And 7, coffee window sign, 2.29 square feet. It should be noted, the height variance referenced in the packet is no longer applicable. The building is 45 feet in height to the midpoint. Therefore, signage is allowed in the uppermost 15 feet according to table 5.24-3. And that's all from the staff report. I will start the presentation. Here's the zoning map highlighting the parcel at Briarwood Mall where this is being constructed, where these wall signs will be constructed. Here's an aerial map, zoomed in. Here's a site plan with each of the proposed signs on the right-hand side. Here is the Harvest Market sign located near the top of the proposed structure. Welcome sign, parcel pickup, farmhouse restaurant, once again, farmhouse restaurant, coffee window, and here are photos taken from staff. And that is all.
Thank you, Charlie. Questions for staff? All right, if the petitioner is here, please come forward, sign in, state your name for the record. You'll have 5 minutes.
Hello, I'm Jay Johnson with Johnson Sign Company. I think other than what these been noted in the response, I have 4 other little areas I wanted to touch base with on this as we think of practical difficulties. You look at the first one, I think this facility could be almost considered as operating as 2 separate businesses. You know, they've got the market and they've got the restaurant and they have separate entrances. So that might require a little bit more signage there too. And I think the storefront sets back considerable distance from the main road, from Briarwood Circle. It's 800 feet to 920 feet is where the cars are going to be seeing the actual building, which if anybody wants, I've got these marked out on here. If anybody wants to see where we picked up those dimensions from. And I think then, as you all know, the view of the storefront will also be blocked by the new 4-story building that's currently being constructed there. And then if I look at really, you know, 3 of the signs, the welcome, the parcel pickup, and the coffee window sign could be considered directional or wayfinding, you know, element, not necessarily a sign element. These essential identification elements amount to like 45 square feet, those 3. So if you look at that, I really don't think that they're asking for more than the intent of the ordinance. If you took that 45 square feet away from what is needed to identify those areas. And aesthetically, the sign package looks relatively small when you look at your, you know, the elevation drawings too. So those are just 4 of the things that I wanted to touch base with. You know, again, is you know, you could look at it as 2 businesses. You could look at, you know, the considerable setback and even the need for those wayfinding signs to get to the appropriate area. So I don't think it's worth me going over everything else that was put in the, you know, standards of the approval that you guys already have copies. Any questions on to me?
Thank you. Questions, Todd?
Mr. Johnson, I do have several questions.
Sure.
So is the signage being proposed for the Briarwood Harvest Market the same size signage at Neiman Foods' 3 other stores? I know, for example, the one in Champaign, Illinois.
Yes.
In other words, is the signage being presented because it's the corporate directive rather than having been customized to this site?
You know, I really don't have those records to know. I've seen photos of the other ones, but I really don't know their sizes. So I can't really answer that to see if it's custom. I know when you look at the pictures, they sure resemble it.
Okay. In looking at the first criterion, practical difficulties, you or whoever completed the application makes the claim that the larger signs will avoid unnecessary traffic congestion. I read that as an opinion. You really don't have any factual support for that statement, do you? In other words, a bigger sign is going to make less traffic congestion. I note the entire area is very congested.
Yeah. And I think the whole point that who filled this out was making that, you know, you need it to be readable, you know, to be visible to help with the congestion of the traffic, but.
In the second criterion, practical difficulties, there's an assertion that smaller signage would be inadequate and create confusion and congestion around the new development. Can you explain how that would occur?
Well, I think what the thought is behind that, and as you can see, these signs are all relatively small as it is, but you need to be able to direct which entrances they need to go to and where they should even park. And if we bring up that major front elevation drawing, and if you look at that again, you can see that it's still relatively small. And I think that it's needed just to get the people in the right areas.
So my understanding is that the harvest market is a very upscale market?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I know my wife's excited for it to get here. I think it's going to be really nice.
And this, whoever chose Ann Arbor, I think, did well.
Yes.
I live in northeast Ann Arbor. You may know that years ago there was something called the Merchant Vino, which moved into either where Farmer Jack's A&P was.
Mm-hmm.
And people from all over the city drove across town to shop at Merchant Vino.
Yeah.
Whole Foods bought the chain, and they messed with it, and it was empty for a long time. But it shows that for grocery shopping, you know, people are willing to travel a lot of distances.
Yeah.
I don't think Kroger's going to be your competition. Whole Foods is down, you know, at Ann Arbor, Saline, and the end of Eisenhower. That may be competition. And the people who ran Merchant Vino, as soon as their covenant not to compete ended, they opened up the 3 Plum Markets. There were 2 in Ann Arbor.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably your competition. But this is a town where people will drive.
Yeah.
And grocery stores, I submit that once you get a habit of getting your groceries at a certain point, it doesn't really matter. You're not looking at the signs. You know where the grocery store is and you're going to go there. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Somewhat, but I do know, like, I live in Jackson, and I know that we travel to go to the Trader Joe's and the Whole Foods
Sure.
because there's nothing there. So it's a matter of trying to find it. And I think the success to this business in the beginning, too, is to be able to direct people to the right location, you know, and get them there. So, you know, people say, I know it's somewhere in Briarwood. And being, you know, like when you're out on that one road, you're 900 feet from that. And it's, you know, and if you look at that elevation, you know, it's not real readable now. You know, it could even be bigger to be more readable, but
So-
from that distance, but,
So one last question. Steve.
yes.
So the amount of extra square footage you want amounts to about 19%, which is not a lot.
Okay.
But your client's contention, I guess, is that unless they get that extra 19%, that they're going to be disadvantaged in terms of business.
And I think some of it would be as some of the other ones, like I mentioned here, you've got your welcome, you got your parcel pickup, you got your coffee window. Those 3 alone come into 45 square foot. If they eliminated that, then it would be okay, but they feel those are really needed to direct the people. You know, that's not more of a means of trying to get you to shop there and to sell more. That's just a means of trying to get you to the right entrances in the right places.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
Do you have a supplemental drawing that you mentioned? I thought the beginning of the presentation.
What I've got here is I've got the, just the distances. You know, like that one, I've got 3 copies of anybody else. But that one shows it being there, but if you see them coming in front of here in this direction, you know, that's 900 some feet as they're coming around to see it,
Okay.
which is a considerable distance that you showed that.
Okay. Oh, I see.
Yeah, do you see the point?
Yeah.
So one's coming one way and one's coming the other way. I don't know if anybody else can talk through this.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, thank you very much. We'll open the public hearing. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this petition, if you are here in person, now's your chance. Please come up. If you're accessing the meeting remotely, please press star 9 or use the raise hand function.
There are no callers at this time.
Thank you, John. With that, the public hearing is closed and we are in discussion. Dharma.
So I guess I have a follow-up question for staff that maybe it's obvious, but we don't make any, there's no distinguishing between wayfinding signs and branding signs. It's all just in one big category of sign, right?
Yes, I believe that's correct. Wayfinding and wall signs would all count towards that total, typically 200 square foot allowed.
Okay, thanks. So it seems to me like there's still a lot of, I mean, you could ditch the welcome sign, for example, and get much closer to the, you know, to the standard and still be able to see it from a distance and from the street. So I guess I'm not really feeling like it's kind of the minimum variance required to get what they want. The welcome kind of seems like a nice to have. So, I don't know.
Dave.
I actually agree with Dharma. I think that welcome sign is totally unnecessary. I think the architecture of the building tells you that that's the front entrance. But I do have a question for staff. Something that is persuasive to me is the restaurant and coffee strike me as a different business, even though it may be owned by the same operator. And I'm just wondering if these were in fact 2 different businesses, would the signage break out differently? Like for one business, you could have X number and the other business could have their signage also? If they were different businesses, if they weren't coming in as one package?
John can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe since this is the same address, they would all come together for the 200 square feet. And if they were separate parcels with separate addresses, that would be the case, what you just laid out.
Todd.
Two things I'd like to say. First, my wife and I will be definitely driving across town down to Arbor to check this permit out. We're willing to drive to look at interesting foods and other things. And I suspect I'm not the only person in the ZBA, the zoning board of appeals, who will do that. Building on my questions to Mr. Johnson, we all know that there's an Apple store in Briarwood. If you drive around, there is no Apple sign on the outside, but the Apple store is always very crowded. Everybody knows where to find the Apple store. And I think this applies not just to people who buy iPhones like my wife and I, but once you get a pattern of grocery shopping, you know where the place is. The size of the sign isn't going to be critical. I think if these signs were shrunk by 19% to meet the requirements of the ordinance, this business would not suffer at all. And if it fulfills the little business blurbs that I've read about it, I think they'll be very busy, and it won't depend on the size of the letter. So given that, I'm going to vote against this, and I would note that the particular criteria of the 5 that I think they have a problem with, one is number 2, practical difficulty. I don't think they've demonstrated they really have a practical difficulty if they were forced to shrink their lettering by 19%. And number 5, of course, the tough one is if they don't get the variance, are they going to be unable to make full use of the property? And the answer is, of course not. They're going to be mobbed. So I'm not going to vote for it. But I'm very enthused about the development. It looks very exciting. I drove by there today, and I'm looking forward to checking the food out when it opens.
Dave?
Darn, I had my microphone on. Sorry about that.
So did I. One more question for staff. So the pickup window, that seems like something that it's useful to have a sign on the wall where the pickup is, but I've seen places where they actually just put some stanchion outside, like a concrete base with a pole with just a simple flag that says pickup here. Would that count towards the signage if they did something like that?
Generally, those are incidental signs. We wouldn't count towards the signage for that. Small signs in the parking lot, things like that. Directional signs in the parking lot, we don't count. It's generally wall signs and freestanding signs for the business identification signs.
Well, I'm going to vote against this. I think the welcome sign is unnecessary. I think there's an alternative to the pickup window sign. If we were allowed to consider this as two separate businesses and allow the extra signage for the restaurant under that pretext, I would potentially vote for it, but as it stands, I'll vote against it.
Any other comments? Are we ready for a motion?
I could make a motion.
Thank you, Dave.
ZBA 25-0010, 910 Briarwood Circle. In accordance with established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants a variance of 38.73 square feet from Table 5.24-3, other mixed use and non-residential and special purpose zoning districts permanent signs. The sign package includes 6 wall signs for a total of 238.73 feet of sign area. The signs must be installed per the submitted plans.
A motion, do we have support? Support. Thank you, Dharma. Todd?
No.
Dharma?
No.
Julie?
No.
Dave?
DeVarty, no.
Christina?
Yes.
Patty?
No.
I also vote no. The request is denied. Moving on to petition ZBA 25-0011, 3310 Washtenaw Avenue. As I noted, this petition is being postponed, but if there is anyone here to speak on this, we can hear your comment. As I mentioned before, it will be noticed again, so you will have an opportunity to speak on this again. I'll note we did receive 2 letters or emails of communication regarding this petition. Those will be carried forward to when this appears on our agenda again. So, is there anyone here that wants to speak on the Chick-fil-A?
Microphone on? She's having difficulty hearing you.
Yeah, sorry, I can move it forward. Is that better?
Somewhat. Are we talking about 630 South Ashley now?
Not yet, but that will be next.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on now to petition ZBA 25-0012, 630 South Ashley Street. Charlie?
Mariana will be presenting the staff report for this case.
Okay, Ariana.
Thank you. So this is 630 South Ashley Street, ZBA 25-0012. Mark Reuter, representing the property owner, is seeking a 15-foot buffer variance from Section 5.20.4 Public Park and Residential Zoning District buffers. The variance is required along the western property line for 42 feet, running north from the southwest corner of the property. If the variance is granted, it will allow the construction of a 2-story, 544-square-foot detached garage with a second-story residential unit in that required 15-foot buffer. The property is zoned C2B Business Service District and is within the Old West Side Historic District. The property is located on the northwest corner of the intersection of South Ashley and West Mosley Streets. The site is currently vacant and was previously occupied by Armin Cleaners. In 2021, the Historic District Commission issued a certificate of appropriateness to demolish that building, and since demolition, remediation has been completed to remove any ground contamination. The applicants are proposing to construct 2 residential units with an attached garage between them, as well as a detached garage with another residential unit above it. Unit A will be approximately 2,552 square feet, and Unit B will be approximately 2,587 square feet in area. Both units will be 3 stories in height. The detached garage will be 2 stories with vehicle parking on that first floor and then a 1-bedroom apartment on the second floor. The 2 properties to the west are zoned R2A, 2-family dwelling district. One of the properties is a duplex and the other is a single-family dwelling. The application received Historic District Commission approval in October 2024, and in December 2024, the Zoning Board of Appeals granted a 26-foot 2-inch variance from Table 5.17-4, mixed-use zoning district dimensions for the construction of the detached garage and the second-story residential unit in the required rear setback. So tonight, we're talking about the 15-foot required buffer, not the setback. And a site plan for this is currently under review, and that will go to Planning Commission. Then, Charlie. So you can see the zoning map. Again, we're looking at C2B, and we are adjacent residential zoning, which is why this 15-foot buffer is required. Here's the aerial. And then just zoomed in, again, the building was demolished, the Armin Cleaners site, so there is nothing there currently. Here is existing conditions, again, nothing on the site right now. Here are the drawings, the proposed layout. You can see the site plan, Unit 1, Unit 2, and the garage between them. And then on the west side of the property, the garage with the residential unit above it on that second story. So this is, wait, can you go back, Charlie? So this, you can see the dimensions on the layout plan. We're talking about that garage building, and so the variance would be for that 42 feet from the north edge of the garage all the way down to the south edge of the property. There will be that 15-foot landscape buffer north of the garage. And then just here's some architectural drawings of what that will look like with the units. Renderings with the buildings in their context. Again, this is zoned commercial and is adjacent residential to the west. Some architectural drawings of some plans of the units. More plans. This one is the first floor. It's the second floor. And then the third floor just for those 2 units. Some elevation drawings, renderings of the elevations, more elevations. And then this is what the site currently looks like. These are photos that were submitted by the applicant. And these are photos of the site that were taken by staff. These were the same photos that were shown at the December meeting, but nothing has changed on the site since then. And I believe that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Todd?
Yes, Ms. Mellon Corcoran, I'm a little confused. So they were here and got a 26-foot variance. Did they not know about the need for a 15-foot variance then? If they did, why didn't they do it then? And could you distinguish between the 2 variances?
Yes, so there was a misunderstanding or miscommunication, and it wasn't clear that the 15-foot buffer would be required when they did come to ZBA in December. It was clear that they weren't going to meet the residential setback or the rear setback because they were adjacent the residential zoning to the west. And then upon further review, when they submitted for their site plan, it was realized that they were going to need also a separate 15-foot landscape buffer because they're adjacent residential zoning. So both of these are requirements because they're commercial zoning, adjacent residential zoning. It's not based on the use, it's based on the parcels and how they're zoned. And they're just two different sections of code, and there was just some kind of misunderstanding or miscommunication. And so they're asking essentially for the same thing, to put the garage with that unit where it is, but they do need the variance from the separate section of code.
Okay, I do have one follow-up question then. So if we grant the 15-foot buffer variance, does that mean there's no buffer between this property and the residential properties next door, or what does that actually mean?
Yeah, it means for that 42 feet, so just for that southwestern area where the garage is located, that there won't be the 15-foot buffer. I think they're showing what the setback that was granted, so it's about 4 feet, I believe.
Sorry, I guess I didn't ask the right question. I imagine a buffer is a bunch of trees that you can't see through, so there's something blocking it, it's a buffer. So it means essentially that it would be open between this new building and the residential building. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the plans, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any plantings or anything in that 4 foot. There will be the 15-foot buffer on the northern side of the site, but there, as far as I know from the plans, and maybe the applicant can answer as well, is that there's no plans for plantings in that area.
So just to be clear then, if the variance is granted, then it'll be a 4-foot separation between the residential property and this building. In theory, they don't have to put any plantings, it would just be 4 feet.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
But they didn't make any, oh, sorry,
Go ahead, Christina.
sure. They didn't make any changes, adjustments to the design from when we saw it in December to now, right? It's the same.
There may be some minor changes, and I think the biggest one is because it was clear that the 15-foot buffer is required, that on the northern side of the property, then there will be trees and plantings, whereas I think the drawings you saw just showed lawn.
Okay.
So that's putting that buffer there.
On the north side?
Yeah, but other than that, only minor changes.
Okay, so the west side is still as how it was presented to us?
Yes, yeah, it's essentially the same plans that you
Okay.
saw.
Thank you.
Dave?
So, the buffer's required because it's zoned commercial, even though this is a residential development. If it was
Correct.
zoned residential and would allow this same development, they wouldn't need a buffer.
Correct.
What kind of hoops would they have to jump through to get a rezoned residential?
It'd be very complicated. Right now, their site plan is just going to planning commission. They would have to take this to council. It would extend their process by a couple months, and it would change their submission. They would have to add the rezoning on. And it may change other setback requirements. We'd have to look into any of the other zoning changes that would apply.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Eventually?
Christina?
Have there been any letters submitted for the property directly to the west? I thought I recalled the last time that there were some.
We did get one letter.
Oh, today?
There's a communication in the packet.
I don't think it has an
Sure.
address on it, so I'm not sure.
Oh.
It just says that it's from a neighbor
Oh, okay.
that's in support of the
That's in support
variance.
of it. I was just curious what was communicated back then in December. I seem to recall that there was something positive about, but that's just speculation from my distant memory from 4 months ago. Nobody else recalls that?
Yeah, I can't
Okay.
remember.
Thanks.
Dave?
One more question. So you said that this had gone before the Historic District Commission and they gave approval to the site plan.
Correct.
If there was going to be any change in use, since it's zoned commercial, theoretically they could put a commercial use in there. Would that have to go to the Historic District Commission?
Yeah, any change in design, any new construction, even minor changes that they may make on their current designs, would have to go before the Historic District Commission. Some of them may be staff approvals, some of them may actually need to go to the commission, but the Historic District Commission does have purview over the site, no matter what happens to it.
So they're kind of locked into a residential use unless the Historic District Commission and the planning staff signed off on a change.
The Historic District Commission signed off on the design, not the use specifically.
Right.
So with the plans that they submitted, they're locked into this design. They could resubmit to the Historic District Commission if they wanted to do something else.
So just theoretically, could you take one of these units that's now slated as residential and without changing the design, turn it into a blind pig with some evening entertainment and go as long as you don't make any design changes?
Yeah, as long as there are no changes to the exterior, and the Historic District Commission would review signage and things like that would go on to the building, but it wouldn't regulate the use. It's just the exterior of the building.
But the commercial use would allow that sort of a
Yes,
thing?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, if the petitioner is here, please come forward, sign and state your name. You'll have 5 minutes.
Dan Williams with Maven Development. I'm the builder of the project. Mark Ruder was not able to make it tonight, so I'm here to answer any questions you guys might have on the project.
All right, yes, Dave.
So I'm looking at the south elevation showing the garage. Is it a 4-foot setback from the lot line?
Correct.
The way this is
Yep.
shown?
It's the same as what it was in the December zoning.
Okay, I don't see that marked off as that many feet here. And then what's the distance between the garage with the ADU above it and the other structures to the east?
To the west?
No, to the east. The garage is to the west of the other structures.
Oh, you mean the detached garage in
The
comparison to
detached
the
garage,
unit?
what's the distance between
I
the
believe
detached
it's
garage and the other unit?
13 feet.
Was there any consideration, or would the code allow that detached garage to have been attached?
That's the complication of this site is, we spent almost 3 years, 2.5 years working with the Historic Commission with Jill on the
Right.
scaling of the project.
Right.
And attaching something, the massing doesn't fit with the character of the neighborhood.
Gotcha.
So that's why we detached the garage, and then adding a unit above the garage, adding extra housing in Ann Arbor that potentially could be more affordable than some of the stuff that's on the market. So we're adding housing, we're staying in character and scale of the neighborhood, which were restricted by the historic district on the development. And then this caveat of commercial zoning, even though you're using it as residential, you have to have the buffer, but if this was zoned residential, you wouldn't have to have it. So that's kind of the caveat of this code that they've cleaned up. This is like one little random, once in a great while deal that still has to conform to both of them.
And these are going to be rental properties?
No, these are for sale product. And
So they're condominium units? or-
condominiums, the duplex condominium. And the property to the west, that garage of the development, that property line is driveway and parking lot. So it's not backing up to any residential next to the property line. It's all traffic on that side of the property line where the garage is. So it's, the garage really isn't impeding
So
someone's
the
view or-
the neighboring lot, that lot line neighbor that is adjacent to the neighboring lot's driveway,
Correct.
is what you're saying?
Driveway and parking lot.
Okay.
So it's all vehicular use over there. It's not backing up to a residential unit.
So
that you'd
if
want some kind of-
if I were just following up on since this is commercial zoned, if I buy this unit as this condo unit, can I convert it to a little restaurant, cafe, and
This is
blind
designed
pig?
for residential use and is going to be built as a residential use, as in the master deed.
Yeah, but once I
it's
buy
recorded.
it, I could reconfigure it. As
Well, the
long as I
master
don't
deed's
do
gonna,
that.
the master deed will limit, I can dictate the master deed, or the master deed can limit the use of the property once it's developed. Just like any condo you buy.
Right, I
It says
understand
you
that.
can't put a coffee.
That's why I was asking
Like I have
about-
my space on Detroit Street, the triangle building, that Detroit Division. When I create that master deed selling units above, my office below, in that agreement with the buyer, we put in there, can't put a coffee shop or any commercial use. It stays as office or converts to a studio residential apartment.
Gotcha, thank you,
So that's the intention.
thank you.
Patty?
This historic, for his work with you guys and approve these plans, right?
Yeah, that was back in, I forget the date now, it's in the report. Where was the?
It was October
October.
2024.
Yeah. And like I said, that was a 2.5 year process, almost 3 with Jill, trying to find the scaling, being commercial zoned and scaling a residential project within the district. That we've taken quite a bit of time to resolve what's in scale.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
I guess one more.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Did you engage neighborhood residents in a process to get input from them?
On the process of the planning commission, we would submit that those mailers were put out. And I do have a recorded conversation with someone on Mosa that was excited about the project, that something was being done with Armin, that it's clean, that something's actually happening.
But no neighborhood meeting or anything like that?
No, it wasn't necessarily required by planning commission on the submission of it,
Yeah,
because
they
it's a
were
small
just
scale
required
project.
to have postcard notifications sent
Pardon
out.
me?
They're just required to have postcard notifications sent out, and any responses that they get, they're required to submit before the planning commission meeting.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, thank you very much. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak, now is your opportunity to do so. Please come forward, sign in, state your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Kitty Klein. I live at 631 South First Street on Kitty Corner from the Armin's lot. I've had a long relationship with the Department of Environmental Quality. I continue to have a relationship with them as someone whose property has been adjacent and was affected by the Armin's spill, if you want to call it that. So I'm assuming that you won't be digging down into the ground when this building goes up. You know, I'm just assuming because there were millions of dollars put into that property to make sure that the contaminant, which was perchloroethylene from the dry cleaners, doesn't seep back out of that land. I think you all know that. I have a second thing I want to talk about. I see that one of your first slides showed the lot line, actually the platting, the way that the building was my lot. I'm sort of directionally challenged. Ashley is to the south of my house, and Mosley is to the west. Nope, that's not true. Yeah, I'm on First Street. Anyway, the way you had the lots platted on there does not match this. Does not match what's on the postcard that was sent to me. It looks like at some point the platting line is not straight, whereas on your document, it's platted straight across here. It looks like either this little line here was sold at some point, God knows what, I don't know what it is. But my point is that when I went out to take a look at my fence, and I looked at the fencing that was put up on that Armin's piece of property, there's 12 feet that overlaps with my fence. It's more than 12 feet, I believe. Could even be the 15 feet you've been talking about for the buffer, not sure. But it's your fence, that new fence is laying against my fence, which of course was damaged by the abatement people. It's very concerning to me. It looks like I could actually lose some property in this deal. I'm really not sure. I don't pretend to be able to read these directional things, but I did know how to read the fences laying on my fence, 12 feet of it. So, do you have any questions?
Nope. Thank you very much.
Is that worth your interest?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do I sign in?
Yes, please.
Okay.
If there's anyone else who wishes to speak on this petition, please come forward. If there is anyone who's accessing the meeting remotely, please press *9 to raise your hand or use the raise hand button.
There are no callers at this time.
Thank you, John. I will note we did receive one letter of support from Jonah Abraham There is no address listed. With that, the public hearing is closed and we are in discussion. Dave?
Another question for staff. The person who spoke at the public hearing raised a question about fences, which to me, so we're not, if we do grant a variance on the buffering, I'm wondering what sort of fence could go up between those two lots? The lot that the developer is developing and the adjacent neighboring residents? What kind of fence would be allowed there?
What do you mean, what kind of fence?
Well,
What
it's like
type of fence,
80%,
style, or height?
height, 80% or 100% opaque.
So anything that's going to be permitted would have to be approved through the HDC prior to being submitted for, or approved for a permit. They'd have to look at the design of the materials and the height.
So any fence would have to also go through the HDC
approval process as well, yes.
So even if the existing neighbor who's already there wanted to do something buffering, they would have to get that approved by the Historic District Commission?
If that property that you're,
If the adjacent property, the property owner,
which
not
one?
this property, not the one being developed, but the one
adjacent to
adjacent
the north,
to the west.
to the west, I'm not sure if that one's in the historic district or not.
It's on First.
It
Yeah,
is,
it's
yep.
in the historic district.
Then they
so
would also have to go through the same process.
Thank you.
Todd?
So it was alluded to several times, a number of years, I think it's 3 years it has taken to move this project along. I think it's easy, in looking at fences in particular footage, to lose sight of two things which loom large in my mind. First of all, this area of the city is very much a border property with commercial, residential, busy streets, everything all mixed. So the standards and the sensitivity one might apply in the middle of a subdivision shouldn't, I think, apply when you're looking at a bunch of border properties from disparate types of zoning districts all coming together in one spot. That's number one. Number two, dry cleaner sites are notoriously difficult. I'm sure they're very strictly followed with federal and state law. I'm sure it was an enormous slog to clean it up. If the developer who's proposing the project did that, he went through the ringer once and is now coming back and has gone through the district commission. It's a vacant property. People's sensitivities, they live next to Armin Cleaners, which was probably very convenient for white shirts when people used to get them starched. But, you're living next to a cleaner, and this is, if anything else, a big improvement over living next to a dry cleaner place. It's a really nice building. I think that it's nice that somebody's willing to slog through this for years to be able to get to rounding to home plate on something that is going to really improve this part of the city. And given all that, I will be voting in favor of this. Regarding sensitivities about fences, often during construction, there are different requirements in construction codes for putting up one type of fence during construction. If the neighbor's fence has been damaged, that's an issue she can take up with the people doing the construction and get recompense for it. But I don't think that in any way negates, in my opinion, the need for this nice building. And kudos to a developer who's willing to put years into something like this and slog through all these enormous amounts of regulations to get to this spot. So I'm glad it's done, and I'm willing to push it down into home plate, and I'll be voting for it.
Did I get my full 3 minutes?
Yes, you did.
I did?
Yes.
I think I'm losing property on this deal, frankly. No? Okay.
Any other discussion? We ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Dave.
I do want to say that in terms of property lines and things like that, this is not a forum to adjudicate those issues. And there are proper forums if somebody thinks that there are some property line issues. I would encourage them, either viewers at home or here on site, to consult with an attorney. I'll make the motion. ZBA 25-0012, 630 South Ashley. In accordance with the established standards for approval, the Zoning Board of Appeals hereby grants a variance of 15 feet in width from Section 5.20.4 Public Park and Residential Zoning District buffers. The variance will run north along the western lot line for a length of 42 feet from the southwest corner of the property. The variance enables the construction of a 544-square-foot detached garage to be built in the required buffer of the rear yard. The project is to be built per the submitted plans.
Thank you, Dave. We have a motion. Do we have support? Thank you, Julie. Christina?
Yes.
Patty?
Yes.
I also vote yes. Todd?
Yes.
Dharma?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Dave?
DeVarty, yes.
The request is granted. Moving on, we have no unfinished business. New business, reports from council. Dharma?
Well, maybe you noticed our agenda was rather short, and it's because, well, I'm just going to say it's because City Council passed the UDC change about non-conforming structures. So we revised the standards for alterations to non-conforming structures so that as long as it doesn't increase the non-conformity, it does not need to come before this body. It can be administratively approved. So we've only been talking about it for the whole 2 years I've been on this body.
Darn.
And we did it.
It's less time we can spend together.
All right. Communication, we noted the 3 emails that we received. Public comment. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak to the ZBA on any matter, now is your chance. You may come forward and speak for 3 minutes, or if accessing remotely, please press *9 or use the raise hand button.
There are no callers at this time.
Thank you, John. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Patty. Support? From Dharma. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.